Design, and I welcome you to the question and answer video or stream for Peacemakers Horrors of War. I'll adjust some of the audio levels and let me know if they're suitable. And you can ask any questions during the stream, and I will get to them in a relevant part or at the end of the stream, depending on where it best fits. As I have different categories, I have a general category, which is all about design, why the game is what it is, and things of that nature. And then I have components, scenarios, game found campaign itself, languages, Dawn of Peacemakers, and lastly viewer questions if they don't fit one of the previous categories. Welcome to the stream, Ville, Anton, Zenon, and MTP. Nice to have you here, and if you have questions, drop them in the comments and I will get to them. As always, Ville dislikes how loud I have music, so I set it a little bit down. Hopefully that's better. So let's start with the categories. First category will be general, and the first question I have for this category is: how heavy would you say the game is? So that's again well, that's a question that there's no single easy answer, but Peacemakers Horrors of War is I would say like in the middle. For example, if you use the Board Game Geek heaviness ratings, I think I would put it somewhere between 2 and 2.5. So it's definitely little bit heavier than Lands of Galshur, for example, and about the same ballpark, I'd say, than Dale of Merchants. Some scenarios might get a little bit more involved than Dale of Merchants in general, but the base rules for Peacemakers are really straightforward. It's extremely easy to jump in and play the game, but to win it or complete some of the challenges in it, that's an entirely new different question. So it's like in the middle, really easy to approach, but not as easy to like grasp on how you actually win the game, and that comes from actually playing it. And let's see the next question on the list. Let's cross that over. The next question we have is: how do the solo rules work? And that's a simple answer with a lot of nuance. The game does not have specific different rules for solo play. That's how I like to design my games. So the game, no matter if the player count, the rules are the same every time. But at the end of each round, I can give better examples by actually showing some components. So at the end of each round, players will always get, no matter how many players you're playing, 1 to 4, will always get 4 new cards from the resource deck, and you will simply divide these with the players. So with 2 players, both would get 2 cards. With 4 players, everyone gets 1. 3 players, 1 gets 2, and 2 other players gets 1 card. And with when you play solo, you get all 4 cards to yourself. Each action in the game you will use a single card to take that action. So no matter the player count, you can take always the same amount of actions. It's just divided between a different number of players, and that creates a nice balance between the player count, as the more you have players, the more you can be in different places on the maps. We can open one half of over here. So the more adventures you have, you can be in multiple places, which can be beneficial, as most of the actions you can take with the cards depend on where you are on the board. So with more players, you can be in multiple places at the same time, and you don't need to move quite as much. But it also means that everyone can do less actions by themselves. So, and because all the cards in the game have something extra that you can do if you are the specific adventurer. For example, here, if you are Jainar, the Agami Heron, you can move 2 cards instead of 1 card in a nearby army's deck. So with more players, it can be harder for the correct player to get the card to use their more stronger version of it. So there's a nice balance between that. And so basically, it's the more there are players, the more you need to cooperate between each other instead of doing a lot by yourself. So the game changes a bit on how it feels to play, depending on the player count you're playing with. I hope that answers the question for the solo rules quite well. Let's see. And Anton, I saw, asked a question that is suitable for this place. So, what is my favorite player count to play Peacemakers Horrors of War? Personally, I like all player counts from 2 to 4, simply because I'm not a huge solo player myself. The game works great with just 1 player. It's just not my favorite way to play board games in general. So that's why I would rate that below 2 to 4 players, just personally for me. And as said previously, it has different feel to the game. So with 2 players, you are planning quite a lot on what you are going to do, as well as what you're going to do together. But with 4 players, you have to less focus on what you can achieve with your cards, but more like what you can achieve together as a team. And 3 players, it's somewhere in between, and I like the different dynamics from those player counts myself quite a lot. And when it comes to solo games, I usually just prefer video games at that point. But if I can offer a solo version of my games, I will always include in the rules. But personally, I just don't like to do a lot of different variants for solo rules. So if the game naturally supports solo play, then I will include it. But if I would have to add a lot of like AI controlled bots or something like that, then I don't usually like to do that kind of solo variants for my games. Let's see. There's few questions. MTP asking for scenario portions of the FHQ. I know there will be 6 scenarios to run through. Would there be tools for making custom campaigns? I'll add it to the list. And another one was, will there be scenarios with 3 factions fighting at the same time? Alright, I added those. Yes, those are the questions so far. And we answered this one, so here's the next Next question is what alpha gamer protection is present in the game, and to put it simply, the cards you have in your hand, the resource cards, they will tell you what actions you can take. So you can every card is a multi-use card, and you can choose it for one of the icon rows or the effect at the bottom. So for example, this local contest could be used for one of the 4 available actions. And as for protecting yourself from potential alpha gamers, is that you are allowed to keep your cards secret. And if you do so, it's pretty hard for others to tell you what you should do when they don't know what you can do. So that's basically what we have in the game for this. So you can keep the cards face up on the table, or you can keep them face down secret in your hand. And as for playtests, people have preferred to keep their cards public on the table, but that's of course depending on the group you're playing with. So if you think someone is being a bit too pushy on their suggestions on what you should do, you can keep the cards secret. Welcome to the stream, board game QC. I was saying the game looks amazing. I'm happy to hear that you like how it's looking. And let's put the next question in. How does the game scale across player counts? I asked. Well, I pretty much explained this with the how the solo rules work, but again, it's the same thing. You always draw 4 cards, and you just distribute them among the player count. So with 1 player you get 4 cards, with 2 you both get 2, with 3 you can choose 1 to get 2, and the rest gets 1, and with 4 players you all get 1 card. That is if there are no horror cards on top of the deck, so there might be horrors on the top, so those will be included in the 4 cards you draw. So for example here, with 3 players everyone would just get 1 card. With 4 players you would choose 1 player to not get any cards on this specific round because of the horror. So in addition to eating your card draws, they will also have negative effects on the other side. So there's something you really want to avoid if possible. But yes, the scales in that a single player makes less stuff with more players, but together you can do as much stuff, and the focus shifts from you doing everything with solo play to you cooperating and planning together what you can achieve with 4 players. And there's a little bit more moving parts with 4 players because you have 4 players moving on the game board, and thus there's more things to actually plan with 4 players. So it's not just like a solo game with 4 players, but there's actually more stuff with 4 players, more options to do things. So it's you are playing a little bit more involved game with 4 players than you're playing with solo game. You have more options available to you, which is nice because there's more players thinking what you can do together. That was that question. And Anton is asking about games changing something before publishing. Let's see where I put it. I think it's yeah, it fits under general. Let's put it here. Is there something you wish changed before publishing? Alright, MTP is saying, is there? It's nice to know it isn't quite a multiplayer solitaire sort of game. Yes, you are together trying to solve the challenge or puzzle in front of you with a lot of stuff everyone can throw to the table. There's a question from Board Game QC. I think that's suitable for viewer questions. Will the game be featured by major channels? And let's check that one. And next question. What's different with the promo horror cards? So the game will come with 24 horror cards, and the horror pack will come with 10 extra ones, and you can simply shuffle them all together to make your horror card even bigger and have more variety, and that's it. But as for the cards, let's see if I have any examples here printed. I think I should have, or maybe I have not printed those yet. Well, let's just still we can look at an example. For example, here is one of the cards that will be in the base game. They all will have the adventure icons here on the top left, and they will tell you which adventure will suffer from this horror. So, for example, for this anxiety, if we were playing, for example, with Tambatro the gecko and Nabo the marble polecat, we see which of those are higher on the priority list. So this horror would hit Tambatro because he's higher. But if you would be playing, for example, with Akesan the Fennec Fox and Nabo, it would hit Akesan. And with all players, all adventures in 4-player game, it would hit Akesan, and the negative stuff would target that player, that adventure. And as for the horror cards in the promo pack, well, first, why there's 24? It's because there's 20. The available combinations of these priorities for 4 adventures is exactly 24. So whenever you get the new horror, it's equally likely to hit everyone in the game, no matter how many players there are. If there's, of course, you're playing alone, it will always hit you, but if you have 2 players, it's equally likely to hit either of you, same with 3 and same with 4 players. And the horror cards in the promo pack will have no icons on the top left at all, and they are like global effects that will affect either everyone or just the armies or something not specific to a single adventure. So the 10 new horror cards in the promo pack will be like that. They will target everyone and not a single specific adventure. That's the main difference between the normal horrors and the horror cards in the promo pack. And let's see the next question here. How did you design the adventure asymmetry? And there's some extra details in the question, like approach to the asymmetry of the characters. How far did you consider going? Character portrait cards, special powers and such, and what made you land where it is? First of all, the original Dawn of Peacemakers, which is like the dad of this game or whatever, we built Peacemakers Horrors of War on top of the core engine of Dawn of Peacemakers, but made a lot of improvements. A lot of those were made based on the feedback we got from this game all over the place, like social media, Board Game Geek. We made a form where we asked people what they liked, what they disliked about this one, and what they would change if they had the chance to do so. And one of the main things people were asking was to have unique abilities for the adventures. And I touched it a little bit before already, but what we ended up with, so in that game there were no differences between the adventures. There were some like agendas and outcome cards that give you one-time use effects per different scenarios and stuff, but those were not linked to which adventure you're playing. But with Peacemakers Horrors of War, we ended up having each of the resource cards. There's 36 of them in total, and there's 12 different of resource cards, 3 for each adventure. And if you are the specific adventure, you have a more potent version of the scheme down here at the bottom. If you use any of the icon rows, those are the same no matter who plays the card. But if you play the special effect here at the bottom, then you have a more powerful version of it if you are the specific adventure. And what made we land on this? We were thinking of course, many different ways to make the adventures unique and special from each other, like special ability you can use once per game or during your turn or something like that. But one of the things we settled down is that all actions you can take in the game should be on your cards. And we didn't want any special cards to deal out to everyone at the start of the game or anything like that. We just wanted one resource deck, and all actions you take are on your card, so you don't need to remember a list of actions. You don't need a summary card of, oh, what can I do on my turn or anything like that. It's just, you see your card, you can use one of the icons, or you can use the effect. Extremely simple to understand and visualize and remember like what you can do on your turn. When you have a few cards, you can, well, these cards are not not shuffled, so you probably have different ones. For example, you might have Lost Missive, Carrier Pigeon, and Consultation, so you can see easily what icons you have available to you and what effects you can do at the bottom. So with that in mind, we figured out that we could make a more powerful version of these schemes for a specific adventure. And one of the extremely nice things about this is that because the cards are randomly given at the end of each round, so for example, Nabo might draw these two, and Tampatra could draw these two. Now you have a little bit of a dilemma, because Carrier Pigeon is stronger if played by Tampatra, and Lost Missive is more powerful if played by Nabo. And this gives really nice dynamics where you can try to figure out, do I play this for the weaker effect, or do we try to figure out how to give it to you in order to you to play the more stronger effect? Because all cards can be given to another player if you are on the same space with them. So you could stay on the same space for the whole game and just distribute your cards however you want. But that will not be too, how to say, not too beneficial to you, as it's really useful to be in different places, sharing spaces with different army units, like if Macavs are here and Ocelots are there. Okay, now we can affect this Ocelot, but we can't do anything about the Macav. So there's a reason for you to go again to here. So the game incentivizes you to sometimes be on the same space to share some of the cards with each other. Sometimes you want to move again to a different place to use an effect for the armies. So there's reasons to be in different places on the map at different times of the game. So this was a really nice way to add to that feeling of, okay, I want to be here right now. Now I want to be here. I want to give this to you, or maybe I use it for the weaker effects, whatever. So it really plays really nicely to the cooperation aspect, and adding a little bit more movement on the board. As one of the things I was not 100% satisfied with the original was that you could easily stay like on the same spot for pretty much the whole game, but now there's a little bit more reasons to move on the board, and you're not satisfied as easily, which creates a lot more interesting, meaningful gameplay. I hope that answers why we ended up with this kind of asymmetry for the adventures. And it's instead of being a single-use special ability or something like that, the asymmetry is always present. As long as the scenario continues, the asymmetry is there in form of resource cards that you are constantly drawing. And there's also a little bit of asymmetry also, as I showed with the horror cards, where they will hit different players based on their priority. So even if they once you start drawing the horrors, each adventure will also be a little bit more asymmetric during that scenario, because once you get anxiety, for example, it hits Tambatra in this case. If Tambatra gets rid of this, it goes to the resource discard pile, and once the resource deck is reshuffled, it will at some point come again, and Tambatra will again have anxiety. So it both gives more flavor to the adventures, because they tend to get the specific kind of horrors. We will theme them in a way that will further increase their personality, what kind of horrors they tend to get. And once you know that you suffer from anxiety in a game, you can try to start playing around it. So that's a new kind of asymmetry, like, okay, my anxiety tells me that I can't leave units without putting some fortifications, so maybe I start moving on mostly on spaces that already have fortifications, so my anxiety has less of an effect. So you can start playing around the horrors once you learn what you are suffering. Okay, there's some new questions I will put in correct places. Have you considered doing a book with just artwork, lore, and stuff? Yeah, that's I think that's like not under anything, so at the end. Okay, have you considered changing the damage discs? Yes, that should go under components. Welcome to the stream, Goran. Do you plan to release more scenarios in the future? That should go under scenarios. And then we have answered this one. Next question. Will there be expansions? That's a question I can't answer with 100% certainty just yet. But what I can tell about our plans is that there won't be an expansion, so to say, to this game outside of the promo horror deck that we have already planned. Simply because if we would make an expansion, there would have to be so much new stuff. We would have to have probably new armies, unless we want to use the same armies. We would have to have at least new map books and at least new scenario cards. Those are the minimum that we would absolutely need. And that we don't have space on the box. We wanted to make the box extremely usable and for setup and teardown, and that meant that we really didn't have the luxury of adding extra slots unless we make the box bigger, and we didn't want to make the box bigger for a possible expansion. So if there would be an expansion, it would have to have at least a nice place for cards and the map books, and that already means that the box would have to be pretty large, and we probably would prefer to use new armies to give you more unique experiences, as that's one of the main things we have tried to do with this, is that all the scenarios are so different from each other, and we do not use the armies too much like again, because we want to give you different and fun new experience in different scenarios. So each scenario uses a different combination of factions, and each scenario has a totally unique army order decks. So even if like the Ocelots are in 2 different scenarios, their order decks between those scenarios are a little bit same, but also quite a lot different. So you learn a little bit of how Ocelots work in a certain situation, and then you can think, oh, how do they work now in this different situation? So the most likely case is, at least our current thought process is that if this is really successful and people want more, we would simply make a new standalone Peacemakers game, which would feature, let's see where I have the stuff. Here's the campaign or the scenario log. So this game is set in South America, and if we would make a new standalone game in Peacemakers series, we would want to put it in a different continent, and it would make it possible to have totally new factions, totally new adventures, new cards, new map books, everything. So it would be the same core rules, but everything else is new: the scenarios, the factions, the cards. We could even have a new kind of resource deck, so there would be like everything new, because that's like the core idea of the new version, is that the variety is extremely high. So doing expansion would kind of like, without having new factions, would go against that goal of having extreme variety. And if we want to keep that way, we would have to just make a new game. And we also wanted to push the usability with the custom insert and fast setup and stuff. And that meant that we are using all the space in the box as well as we can, which doesn't leave a lot of room for extra cards or extra factions and stuff. So we would just make a new box with new set of scenarios, new factions, and every new adventures. So current plan is that there won't be expansions for this one, as it would go against. You would have to have 2 boxes open, both find components from one and the other, and then it's not as easy to get on the table anymore. Then we have a really specific question about comparing. How does Peacemakers Horrors of War compare to Spirit Island? And if there's some similarities, or did I take inspiration from Spirit Island or things of that nature? When we started designing this, I think the remake of Dawn of Peacemakers, I think I have not played Spirit Island at that point yet, but since then I have played it once on Tabletop Simulator and I was really impressed, and it's on my list of games to get at some point. It was really inspiring, like, and really nice game, even though it's not a specifically kind of game I would design, simply because it has a bit too many moving parts for my taste to design. I still like it's on high on the list of games to get, and I did enjoy it. And the comparisons, I understand where they come from, because there's the humans coming to the new island where you play as a spirit and try to get rid of them. So you're kind of trying to make peace, or you're fighting against an AI, an automatically controlled force, which are the humans in that case. And here we have the armies which are fighting against each other. So in Spirit Island, the humans are controlled with quite a simple deck, which usually just has like the different terrain types, and then the same terrain type will activate again and again and again in different ways. Like first they invade there, then they destroy natural resources, then they start to build their own things, stuff like that. So it's more predictable once like it slowly progresses and you're like, can we stop it? But here the armies are more, they do crazier stuff. In Spirit Island you do the crazy stuff with your card combos and things. Here you can also do really nice combos and stuff with your cards, but also the armies are more unpredictable, and you don't similarly you do learn slowly what they can do, but the progress is not on what they are going to do each round. Is more of a mystery compared to Spirit Island, where it escalates and escalates and escalates, and you're just trying to keep up. But here, each round you draw new cards from the order decks. Like you have, for example, for the first scenario, you have the Ocelots have their own order decks like this, and every round you will draw the top ones and combine them together and do whatever they say. Like this round the Ocelots would do a surprise strike, and the next round they will do something entirely different, and it's not linked exactly to what they did before. So you don't, in that way, you don't see how they escalate on what they're going to do. But once you have seen all the cards that they have in their deck and you reshuffle it, you start to learn what they can do, and you can better play around that. And also you can peek at these cards. It's one of the main actions is the survey with the eye symbol, where you can flip this over, and now you are knowing that they're doing a strike. So there are definitely similarities, but Spirit Island is definitely the more heavy game of these two, but there are mechanical and thematic ties between these two, absolutely. And the next question, we have three very similar questions in a row. Which one is my favorite adventure? We have the four adventures, and I'm not sure if I have a single specific one. They all have really nice special abilities, or like stronger cards. Tambatro can heal 4 points of damage instead of 2, so he's really great at that. And one of my favorite cards for him is Carrier Pigeon, which lets you send cards between players, and Tambatro can send 2 cards instead of 1, which can sometimes be really huge when you want to give the correct cards to the correct players. Akesan has also some really nice stuff. It's so hard to pick one of them. If I would have to pick one, I might have to go with Tambatro, just maybe simply because the Carrier Pigeon is so nice when you're playing with 2, 3, or 4 players. One of my favorite cards, even if it itself you don't do a lot, but it lets you do really nice combos late by starting with it, because you can change the cards between players even if you're not in the same space. and Tamatro lets you do that with 2 cards instead of 1, so that's quite nice. Next question is which one is my favorite leader, and the game has quite a lot of leaders, roughly 2 per scenario. Some have more, some have less, so there's roughly 12 leaders, and there are many nice ones, but even if I hate him in one level, I really like him for his unpredictability, and that's Voshira, the Ocelot leader from scenario number 4. I don't have... Oh, yes. Here. It's not on this nice one, because this was all from the factory and it only has 2 scenarios and the rest are blank, so I have this a little bit uglier version. But here is Captain Voshira from the Ocelots, and those who have played Dawn of Peacemakers, you might remember him from one of the scenarios there, and he makes a comeback here. And what's special about him in the scenario number 4 is that this will also answer one of the following questions a little bit, but we'll get that still. That there's 3 factions on this scenario number 4. It's basically iguanas versus toucans, and ocelots are either allied with iguanas or with toucans, and their alliance can shift between the sides during the scenario. And as much as I hate him during the scenario, I like his thematic vibes and stuff, so I would say Voshira would be my favorite, even if he's not my favorite to play against. Like, okay, we are not playing actually against, but in the same scenario. Next question is the third in the bunch, and that is which one is my favorite faction. We have 7 factions. We have the Ocelots, Scarlet Macaws, Tuotaras, Spectacled Bears, Tokotukans, Green Iguanas, and Strawberry Poison Frogs. And 3 of these were in the original Dawn of Peacemakers, so we have 4 new factions here. And it's a tough pick, but I do have quite a soft spot for for Ocelots, both in Dale of Merchants and also here in Peacemakers. They just love the randomness and embrace it. I like all of them, but maybe it's a boring answer as I like the Voshira, but maybe I would say that Ocelots are my favorite. And next question was asked actually during the stream. Will something change before publishing, or do I want to change something here before the game goes to print? Well, obviously we want to finish up all the scenarios and stuff, but these bases and the meeples were one of the ones that I was most afraid of. They can be fit together like this, and it will show the group with the shape for the meeples. And this is something that I was ready to, like, okay, we need to work a lot to get this right. There's 3 different shapes, these ones in addition to the circle. But fortunately, so this is a long-winded answer. So fortunately, we did not have to go through multiple rounds. We had to go multiple rounds digitally, but the first physical sample we got for these is exactly as I hoped. It's as good or better than I hoped it to be. So we are so happy this worked out as it was. So that's pretty much what I was thinking. I need to change a lot before publishing, but we hopefully do not have to do that. But the thing we will change like the most is the insert. So even if this insert is like 90% there and really great, there are many small adjustments we will make it to make it even better. A few of them is that these wiggle around quite a lot, so we will make these slots for them just a little bit tighter, so they will stay in their place more nicely. That's like pretty minor thing, but two big ones are that these slots for the armies are a bit too tight. Like you can fit everything here, but especially like these two cons, you have to arrange them a little bit, and it can be a bit tedious if you don't like know the correct way to put them there. If you just take this after playing, if you take two cons and just try to put them here, they are going to stick out. As you can see here, it doesn't like fit there, and then you need to take them away and put them nicely. So we are going to make these two wells for the fortifications and the damage tokens. We're going to make those smaller this way, because they do not need this much space, and we're going to use that space to make these taller. Everything here will shift a little bit up, and we will make these taller, so they have a lot more wiggle room, so you should be able to just toss them in without having to play Tetris with them. And we're also going to make these dividers for decks thinner, while keeping them as strong as they need to be, because currently it's not we actually you can't fit some of the scenario cards inside between these, and that's one of the things. We will make these thinner, so there will be more space for cards between them, so you will be able to fit all cards sleeved in the insert. But this was the first version we got from the factory, and it's always hard to get everything exactly right, and the process for making inserts like includes samples, where you get a sample, you test with all the physical components, and then you will make revisions until you're happy. So we are making those changes for the insert until we're happy with it. And we have still two questions under general. One, the second to last, is: will the game be sold at retail after fulfillment? The game will be available on our online store as all other our games, outside of Dawn of Peacemakers, which is out of print. So that's but the game will be available on our online store for sure, and at some retailers, basically those who want to stock it. There are some retailers where you can almost trust that if they have our previous games, if they have Dale of Merchants and or Lands of Galsur, they will probably stock this one. But if they don't have either of those, it's kind of unlikely for them to stock this. So there are not too many. There's quite a nice number in total, but in general there are like thousands of retailers, and we are just in a really tiny handful of those. You can encourage your retailer, your favorite local retailer, to stock our games, in which case they will probably stock this one as well. But other than that, we don't have direct control who stocks our games and who does not do so. And quick one about retailers is another one. If you are a retailer and you're looking at this video, you can email us at the link below, info@snowdaledesign.fi, if you want to stock our games, and we'll be in touch. Then we actually go to the next section, which is this section is about components, and the first component related question is, do the cards fit in the box sleeved? Which is like the favorite question of everyone ever in any Kickstarter or GameFound crowdfunding campaign. Yes, the cards fit in the box sleeved. As I said previously, they do not fit correctly in this insert, but this is the first prototype which we will improve, and the final one will fit everything in their correct place, so you can fit. We had these labels for the armies here on the front, and similar we have labels here at the back for the cards where you put them. They are also on this side, so you can look at the box any way you want, and you still have the labels for the different card decks. So if you sleeve, you can put everything in their correct spot. You do not need to put like resource cards where the horrors are or anything like that. You can put everything neatly where the labels are if you sleeve. Then we have next question. How do the meeples and their bases work? I showed this also before, but I can show it again, so people can find them with the correct timestamps. All meeples have this square shape here. It's the same size for all the different army meeples. The adventures do not have it because they don't use the bases, but all army units have this base on them, and you can take any of these shapes and you simply push it here, and this is made. Meeples are from wood, and the bases are made from soft PVC, and once you put it here like this, it does not come off. No matter what you do, it doesn't come up on its own. So when the unit is on the board, you can easily move it around, and you don't have to worry about this slipping off. But once you are done, you want to put the game away, it comes off really easily like this. No trouble with that, and then you can put these back in the insert, and that's it. So these are from soft PVC, as I said, and you can see they can deform if I squeeze them. And we have three shapes for them, and they will divide the units in different groups, which are shown here on the map books. So for example, we can see that this scenario has one Ocelot warrior with the circle base and two archers with the gear shape, and they are from AFG, EFG, and you can see here where they are put on the map book and which direction they will point during gameplay. And their letters are like that because here's the left side with the A, B, C, D for the Macavs. They have one star leader, one star soldier, and two circle soldiers. And then you can see here where you put those during setup. And all the order cards will affect certain groups. Like for example, this card will show that the gear group for Ocelots will attack, and we can see also that there's a fallback, the faded out circle. So if all gear group Ocelots are defeated, then this card will target the circle Ocelots at that point. So that's how the meeples, their bases, work in the game. Then we have a new question from the stream. And the question is, have you considered custom wooden tokens? Just as an upgrade, as a deluxe version, anything like this. So the game has these two relatively plain tokens. We have the pink damage tokens, and we have the bluish cyan fortification tokens. These are stacked next to units if they have taken damage, and these mostly players, but sometimes also the army units will place these fortification tokens on the map to protect them from incoming attacks. And these are, we have thought about making them custom shape or prints or something like that. But the more we thought about it, we decided to leave them like this. Here you can see the damage. One rolls away. So if they would be like custom shape or something, they would mostly have to be this. The damage is this icon on the cards themselves, like 3 scars and a blood drop. I think I can find here a card with that too. So here's a fraction of food poisoning that you can give some damage to a unit. And it could be like something similar to this shape, but the problem would be that they are not as easily stackable at that point. As unit gets more damage, usually it's handy to put a stack of these next to the unit. And if they were something not circle, basically, you could not stack them as easily, or you could, but they would look less neat, less organized. Because if they are not like aligned properly, some of them are like different alignments. For example, if I stack this one, two of these star shaped, then it would look uglier like this instead of being like perfectly. Here comes my OCD, perfectly aligned like this. So with circles, you don't ever need to align them; they just are always aligned with each other. Similar to the cubes, they are the fortification tokens have also an icon for them, which is this tower icon. At the bottom of that, you can see the tower icon. And they could be in the shape of that tower, but they would be more fiddly to put on the board like nicely. But cubes, you put any way you want, it's always correct. There's no wrong way to put the cubes, and they are also pretty nice to stack or put next to each other or something like that. So that's why we prefer the plain boring shapes to keep them more easily neat on the game board, and really fast to see how many there are, and they're not distracting you from the neat other wooden pieces. So we have thought about offering some deluxe versions of these, but we ended up not doing that because, in our opinion, it would be actually a worse experience to have them be different shape or something like that, as now they're really not distracting you, and it's the situation on the game board is really easy to read with these, and if they are more complicated, the situation is harder to read on the board. That was for the components. The next section we have is scenarios. So let's go to the first scenario question, which is, does the game include a campaign? And the simple answer is no, and that's in contrast to Dawn of Peacemakers, which did have a 12 scenario campaign in it, but Peacemakers Horrors of War has just has 6 scenarios, and they do not have to be played in any order, and they are separate from each other. You can play any if you wish, and you can jump between them and replay and stuff like that. So the goal of this was to make the game as easily approachable as possible, as many of us I think can have similar problems with games we own, that we have campaign games on our shelves that we have either not started or we have but we have not completed because it's hard to get the same people on around the table every time. So with this we took a different approach where it's more like a traditional game in a sense, like a Ticket to Ride or Pandemic or Power Grid, whatever game you think which does not have a campaign. It's just you put on a table, you play, you put it back. You don't need to think, oh, do we have the same players or something like that. And we wanted to make Peacemakers this kind of game that you can always play if you want. A bit similar to Lands of Galsur, which is a story-based adventure game, but you can play it anytime you want, because you can jump in, you can jump out, players do not get stronger, you can play again with the different or the same players. So both have the same thought process behind that you can play it with anyone anytime you want. But the added benefit, it's not the same game every time, but you have actually 6 different scenarios with different challenges to make them even more different from that. So think of it more like a normal game without campaign, but you have the added benefit of choosing one of the 6 scenarios instead of thinking, oh, it's a campaign with just 6 scenarios. That's what this is, but it's not that common, so it's harder to communicate and have people understand what kind of game it is. So it's all to serve the single purpose of actually being able to play the game, to actually get it on the table. Like, I really like playing Dawn of Peacemakers, but the problem is that if you want to play any scenario like replay, it's best if the players you have played with have played the campaign already, and then you revisit the scenarios. But that's really tough order to have a lot of people in your game group to have finished a 12 scenario campaign in order to play it freely. So we wanted to have you be able to actually play this freely with anyone you want, to be an a game you can come back to when you wish, when you want. So that's why the game does not include campaign. It doesn't mean that you can't play the 6 scenarios with the same group one by one, but there's we have story for like setup story for adventures, or like seeing all these different things on the map. We have 6 different conflicts, and we have received a letter, and we want to go and resolve these conflicts. And then we have a story before every single scenario, and what the adventures are talking about that, and different illustrations. But there's not, you can play them in any order you wish, and that's we still wanted to have story here, but we did not want to limit it to you having a mandatory order of going through these scenarios. Next question I have touched just a little, but it's how much replay value is there in the 6 scenarios? As I said earlier, it's more like a more traditional game that you can play as many times as you want, with the added benefit of being able to choose the scenario before delving in. But there's built-in variety in each scenario, and that's in the form of these order decks, and each scenario has at least 4 order decks, 2 per faction. some have more. We can get back to that with the different upcoming questions. So based on how these are shuffled at the start of the game, the armies will behave in really different manner. It's not only what order, when will they attack, when they will defend, but also the modifier kind of from the left side, and the combination of those two cards really add to the variety. And another thing is the resource deck, which has all the cards you will use to take actions during the game. And even if it's the same in any given scenario, there are differences between scenarios. But let's first start with the variety in a single scenario. The order in which this happens to be will dictate what tools you have in your toolbox to resolve the current situation. And based on that, you have different situations you need to resolve, and you have different tools to solve that situation. So that makes the puzzle in each scenario really different from each other, simply how these get shuffled at the start of the game. So that's in each of the scenario. And then all scenarios have these different checkboxes that you can cross once you complete them. First is just win the scenario. Then you can try to win the scenario with no casualties, so no army units gets defeated at all. And that's already, in all scenarios, that's one of the hardest challenges already. And then we have two, so that does not have any additional rules to it. It just don't let anyone die. And then this next one, we have two of these with the trophy icon, and those are unique challenges for that scenario. So the game has 6 scenarios, each with 2 unique challenges. So there's 12 different challenges for each scenario, and we have tried to keep them really simple while having a large impact on the game. For example, in the first scenario, the cautious invasion will alter the starting motivations. So normally when you play the first scenario, the Macavs are the aggressors and they have really high motivation, and Ocelots are the defending ones and they have like medium motivation. But if you play with this one, the Ocelots start with really high 10 motivation and Macavs are already almost surrendering at 2. So you really need to think about differently on the scenario, like what do we do so the Macavs do not surrender, which is like what you normally want them to get lower to the green zone to win the game, but they are already in the green with the challenge on this side. They start here with 2 and you do not let them drop to black, while you have to try to get Ocelots from 10 to 4. So it's really swaps the situation on its head, and you just alter the setup and that's it. You don't need to remember anything after that. And the other one is Bad Memories, where you have to shuffle 4 random horror cards into the resource deck after dealing starting hands. So you have already 4 of these ugly cards in the deck. One of the other final example for the scenario number 2 is the Fog of War, where you simply cannot survey. And surveying in this game is one of the main actions. It's the top one here with the icon, and when you use a card for the survey action, you can choose one of the decks from an army you are in the same space on the game board, and you can flip it face up. And then you know what they're going to do next round, and you can react to it with your other cards. So with the Fog of War challenge, you cannot do that. So you have to play kind of blindly. And that challenges are meant to be tried to play once you have already played the scenario at least once. So you have the knowledge of what kind of cards they have, and that okay, now we don't know what they have doing now, but we have an idea what they can do. And there are also some schemes, some special effects here at the bottom that still let you flip this, or some other ways of gaining information, but you cannot use the survey action. So the challenges are simple on paper, but flip the scenario on its head. So there's quite a lot of replay value, and I can honestly say that it will take a lot of effort to cross all of these boxes 4 per scenario. So you have 24 different challenges to complete if you want to like do everything available in the game. Next question about scenarios is how do the challenges change the scenarios? I should really read ahead, but I'm going to answer before answering the previous one because I'm answering so widely. So as I told you already, they will do simple stuff but will have large impact. I already answered that one on the previous question. And then we have a question from a viewer. And can players make custom scenarios? And if so, like how? And are we going to provide you with some tools to make that happen? Of course, you can make custom scenarios. Nothing prevents you from doing that. Just the difficulty is that you will have to like make your own map books, or you can of course use one of the available spreads with your own stuff. You need to decide where the units will start. You need to create the decks, and we have scenario-based cards, and all the cards have a label at the bottom which helps you sort them back to different scenarios. So basically you can use any cards from any scenarios and build your own decks for your armies and stuff like that. Or you can create custom cards and print them and put them in sleeves or something like that. So it's possible, but you have to like do a list of cards you want everyone to have, or print them yourself and things of that nature. But if players are interested in actually making their own custom scenarios, we can definitely add resources to our website where people can download like a template of the cards without any text, so you can put whatever you want there. We can put like an empty template of the map book, so you can design your own terrain and stuff as well. I was thinking of maybe we could include like empty one in the map book where you can draw your own stuff, but usually I don't see a lot of like demand for this from players, that they want empty stuff. And even as a game designer, when I see empty cards in a game, like which says, oh, you can design your own stuff, I'm thinking just, oh, they just had some extra cards here they wanted me to feel good about, but I'm never going to use them. So we're probably not going to include empty components in the game, because most people will not use them anyway. But I can definitely make available empty files for people to download and play around and print their own stuff. Next one is about different factions. Does any scenario feature 3 factions? We have 2 scenarios that will feature 3 factions. One of them is the scenario number 2. Let's open that one here as well. So this one is the scenario number 2, and it has 3 factions with the Tuataras, Spectacled Bears, and Scarlet Macaws. With the Tuataras and Spectacled Bears being allied with each other, and Bears and Macavs have 2 decks each, which is like the normal number of decks, but then Tuataras have just a single deck for themselves, so this has five decks total. And I already showed it a little bit, but there's a scenario number 4 will have 3 factions, each of them having 2 decks, with the Ocelot changing sides. Sometimes they are with iguanas and sometimes they are with toucans. And the last scenario, number 6, will also have 5 decks, but one of them is not an army deck. It's a negotiation deck, and you will have to wait a little to see more about that. But as said, we try to make all the scenarios as different from each other as possible, and from the scenario log already we can see that the scenario number 2 here has bears and Tuataras versus Macavs. Here's just 1 versus 1, 1 versus 1. Here's 2 versus 1, but the Ocelots can change sides during the scenario. 1 versus 1 and 1 versus 1. And just checking that I have not missed any questions. Yeah, the chat was stuck a little. Let's see. That one I have added. Here's a new question. I can put it at the end. That, what else? Yeah, having special abilities and horror on the cards is great, so you don't have to remember them, but will it all feel random if you don't know from the start that character acts is healer, etc. At the end as well. Have a guest star. Oh no. Oh no. Fix that really quick, like so. Welcome to stream, Sir Tekos. Looking forward to the new insert, even if nothing will be under it for my new unboxing next year. Welcome to stream, Dano Super. Sorry, I know they ask you this a lot, but any publisher approach to release game in other languages after the campaign? I have a section for languages, I will answer it there. So I will have correct sections and timestamps afterwards. So Tekos is asking, or saying, I think so far that hasn't happened yet, unfortunately, but I'm open towards that. No spoilers yet, I will answer that soon. Next, last question about scenarios is here. Do you plan to release more scenarios in the future? A bit similar to that, are we going to release expansions? And the most likely answer is that unfortunately we are not going to release expansions or extra scenarios for this one, but if the game is popular, we would more likely release just a new game in a new continent with new adventures, new factions, new maps, new army new armies, new everything. So that's our approach to this game, is an extreme variety with minimal recycling of common like stuff between scenarios, and having extra scenarios is kinda against that philosophy that we have in this game. So we would most likely just make a fully new game with everything new. And that was the last scenario-based related question. The next few questions are about GameFound campaign itself. And the first question. Let's hope it's not too long to break my graphics. Oh yes, it's good. What products will be available in the Pledge Manager? Kenzie Cat won't be available in the Pledge Manager. So simply put, everything we have on our online store in stock will be available in the Pledge Manager. So that includes Lands of Galzur or all of its accessories, Tale of Merchants full series 1, 2, 3 collection, beavers, and all of its accessories individually. So you can add them individually to your pledge afterwards. We didn't want to include them in the campaign page, as we have quite a lot of stuff that we will add there. And if we would add them to the campaign page, it would be a real long piece of content not related to the Peacemakers Horrors of War, which the campaign is all about. So we decided to leave it in the Pledge Manager simply to keep the campaign page more concentrated on the game at hand. And then we have a question, another question about GameFound. Why are there no stretch goals or add-ons? It's also answered in the game page, but we do not believe in artificially removing stuff from the game to be added as stretch goals that we are definitely going to hit. If we make stretch goals in our campaigns, we want them to be ones that if we hit them, they will be in the game. If not, then not. And that makes designing a game really hard when you don't know what's going to be in the box, and it makes it hard to price it at correctly when you don't know what's going to be in the box, and many things of that nature. So we prefer to design like complete games, knowing what's going to be in there. Like, what if there's no fact? What if there's not one? The frogs are in the game. What do we do with the insert? Is this here, or what do we do if there's less scenarios? So we could say that, oh, the game comes with 4 scenarios, but then we have 2 scenarios as stretch goals and some factions as stretch goals and stuff like that. But I'm not ready to release the game without the 6 scenarios, without the 7 factions. So it's like deceiving, and I don't like to do that in the campaign. And for add-ons, I explained why we want to keep the campaign page focused on the new game, and we are going to add our previous games as add-ons in the Pledge Manager. And that's all about the GameFound campaign. Next section will be about languages, and this is something that was asked in the chat as well. And the first question is which languages will the campaign be in? The campaign is currently just in English, and we will keep it just in English. This is simply, even if we find partners for other languages during the campaign will still be just for English. We have learned that even if we do not if we have in the campaign different languages and we don't localize those because we make our games just in English, and if other publishers join us for the campaign, people will still associate the game and the translation and the communication and everything to us, even for their localized version, even if we don't have power over that localized version. And we just prefer to now have crowdfunding campaigns in English, and the other languages, the other publishers can have their own campaigns if they want. They can go directly to retail or whatever they want, but then we have our campaigns. They can have their campaigns if they want. So that's about the campaign and the languages. But then the next similar question is which languages will the game be available in? And that's well, it's not more complicated question, but question I don't have a solid answer. Basically, in any languages other publishers want to publish the game in, we will publish it in English, and if other publishers want to approach us and release the game in other languages, we will make a deal with them and then they can license and localize it. Currently, we are pretty sure that the game will come in Chinese, but even that is not signed yet, and we have many other publishers shown interest in the game in their language, and we have ongoing talks with those publishers, but currently have not signed any quite yet, so I don't know yet. I can share, usually we let the other publishers share once we have signed the deal. They can share the information when they are ready to do it. It's more fair for them to do when they are comfortable doing it. Those were the questions about different languages, and the next section is Dawn of Peacemakers, and our first question about Dawn of Peacemakers is here. Once it shows up, how does this relate to Dawn of Peacemakers? Let's take a quick look at the upcoming questions, so I answered this one and not the other ones yet. Yes, so thematically, Dawn of Peacemakers takes place a few years before Peacemakers Horrors of War, so the story is continuation of what happened in this one. Basically, the adventures come from different places of the world to this one, and they're a little bit selfish, and they want more about goodies for themselves than actual peace. But by the end of the game, they learn to work together more, and they establish like a guild of sorts together, and they want to prevent wars from now on. And that's where then it takes few years, and then the continent is on the brink of chaos once again. And that's all covered on this opening story, where you have a letter from a familiar character for those who have played the original, and it tells the story for those who have not played Dawn of Peacemakers, like what's going on, so you do not feel left out even if you can't play the original. So it's just we try our best to answer your questions here about what happened before and what's going now. It's story-wise, that's how they relate to each other. I will have one complete stream later, you can find from the stream schedule, that will be all about the differences between Peacemakers and this one, so I don't go to details of all of that here, as it will take hours, and we have a separate streams for that. Next question concerns are we going to reprint Dawn of Peacemakers? and the simple answer is no, and for few reasons. It's also it's expensive, but one is that the rules for Dawn of Peacemakers are now kind of like outdated. We don't want there to be two Peacemakers games in our like current offering that are really similar in rules but still different, because then like, okay, now I'm playing this one, what were the rules, now I'm playing this one and the rules are a little bit different. So we want you not to be having to bounce between two different rule sets. So we are not going to reprint it as is, and we believe this to for Peacemakers or War to kind of replace Dawn of Peacemakers, even if it's not a remake. It's kind of like replacement for that, and it had also some of other. Well, I will answer. So I actually know that there's some other questions that I will answer just soon enough. But we are not going to reprint it, and if we were going to reprint it in some shape or form, we would replace the miniatures that the game comes with. You can see here some of the miniatures on the back with meeples, similar to this new version, and also it has a map that you use tiles to build the scenarios, so we would also replace that with the scenario like map books. But all of that is a huge amount of work that we are not currently sure if that's like worth it. So it's based on like how popular this is, like do we reprint it in a new form, or even then we would think like, do we really want to make this again, or put that effort in making a new Peacemakers game in a new continent with all new stuff, as the original had just 3 factions, and now we are like preferring, let's have more factions, it's more fun to have more variety. So kinda remaking this would not make sense in that case as well. Let's go back to one of the Dano Super talking about would be nice to have generic page at the end of like empty spaces and stuff in the scenario books and stuff, would be like fun idea. But yeah, the problem is that it's like interesting for like maybe 1% or less. Most people just ignore it, and it still means that everyone would have to pay for it, because if we add extra stuff to the map books, it will increase the cost, and everyone would be like paying for the extra pages and empty stuff that they don't need for anything. And the insert is designed for the 7 factions and the 6 different scenarios. There's no good place to put the extra cards, for example, so it would pose difficult questions and make the organization of the box worse, unfortunately. Next question about Dawn of Peacemakers is it worth owning both Dawn of Peacemakers and this new Peacemakers Horrors of War? And basically, if you like, depending on what you like about Dawn of Peacemakers, if you like the gameplay, the cooperation, a theme of making peace and stuff like that, definitely yes, this is a new game with just new content. But if you only liked the, little spoiler alert, traitor aspects of Dawn of Peacemakers, then, and you would imagine hating anything without that, then this might not be for you, as this is, as said, we focus more on the theme of peacemaking, which meant that we did not want to have traitor aspects anymore in the game. So if that's the only thing you like about Dawn of Peacemakers, or not the only, but you think that you would not like it without that, then it might not be for you. But if you like overall everything else, then definitely it's worth owning both if you like this kind of game. And this is really similar. The previous one I already said it because it was about that. Does the game include semi-cooperative aspects? And the simple answer is no. We wanted to one of the feedback also, like, people was like surprised that the game had semi-cooperative aspects, the Dawn of Peacemakers, as it when people buy a game named Dawn of Peacemakers about making peace, they expect it to be cooperative and everyone trying to stop the war and stuff like that. So it didn't play well with the expectations of people when they buy a game named Peacemakers. So Horrors of War does not have semi-cooperative aspects in it. And next question. Does the game include a skirmish mode? Again, no, for pretty much the same reasons. Dawn of Peacemakers had a skirmish mode where you actually could control the armies against each other instead of playing an adventure, and that again is not what you expect from a game called Peacemakers, that you actually try to kill each other by controlling armies. So one of the it was like kind of a little bit of an identity crisis in a way that the Dawn of Peacemakers wasn't sure what it wants to be, and in answer to that, it tries to be everything at once. So it's a cooperative game, it's a semi-cooperative game, it has traitors, it can be a war game, you fight each other. So it's a lot of stuff, and we had to make some like compromises, or even if not compromises, we had to add extra rules to make all of that work. And in order to make the game more approachable, we had to take something away, and the skirmish mode and the semi-cooperative aspects were some of those that we felt that did not serve the theme and what the game was trying to be. And Ville says that felt personal. Maybe it was your inspired question, but a good one nonetheless. And Ville has never heard anyone who plays the skirmish mode yet. On our questionnaire, which we asked like what you liked and what you disliked and stuff, we asked how many have played skirmish mode, and it was really tiny percentage. So most did not ever play that, and we still had to add rules for it, and even had to make sure that the components that are shared between both game modes need to work with both game modes. Now we don't need to worry about, is this card balanced if I can play the army's order cards, like this for the ocelots and stuff. Like if I can play these cards, are they balanced? They don't need to be, because you're never going to play, only the armies play these cards. So it's something that opened up more design space when we don't need to think about, are you playing the armies, are you playing the adventures, because you're always playing the adventures. And the game being as unique as it is, it's better to be more approachable than a really complicated one. Like, there's deep and meaningful fun decisions, but we want the barrier to entry to be low, and that's something we have achieved by taking some of the stuff also away. And Tekos is saying that I think it's good to drop the skirmish mode, especially because of the theme. The game is great enough like this and doesn't need that. Thank you for agreeing. And then I have two more questions. One is, why is the original game, Dawn of Peacemakers, about lowering motivations? Like, what was the design reason, or why it was like that? And similarly, why this game is also like that, like both sides have motivation that you need to lower to green. Basically, it was just a means to an end. The game was born from an idea of making a game about peace, and then I want the game of that there needs to be an AI of sorts or two fighting each other, and you want to stop them from fighting. And a simple way to achieve that was to show a numerical value of how much they want to continue the war, and you lower it in one way or another. So that framing is the same between both games, but the big difference is how you lower the motivation. In the original one, you have the motivation and it's mostly lowered by defeating units. So once a unit is defeated, it gets placed off the board. And that was the main way to lower the motivation since the original one. But that again was kind of against the expectations people had when they buy a game named Peacemakers. So in this new one, the goal is the same, to lower the motivation, but how you do it is done differently, and it's mostly about ruining their plans from their order decks. So when they have plans and they don't go as they wish, their motivation gets lowered. The motivation also lowers if a unit is defeated, but it will also make you get a new horror card. So that's something you want to avoid by that doing. But if you are really desperate, you might sometimes do that, but you will have the consequence, and it feels bad. It feels bad for you, and it feels bad thematically for the adventures to see that happen. So that's the difference between how the motivation works. So it works the same, but also a little bit different. So one final question about Peacemakers is this one. Why are there no personal agendas anymore? So in the original, you at some point of the campaign we introduced agendas, and it's a secret card only you can look at, and it will show you extra condition on what you need to do in order to win the game, and it played to the semi-cooperative and traitor aspect of that game. And for the same reason we dropped the skirmish mode and the traitor aspects is the same reason why we dropped the personal agendas, is because it does not play well with the expectations of people when they get a game named Peacemakers, and we had to do something if we wanted to streamline the game, and personal agendas did not feel like that important in the grand scheme of things. They are really fun and in that game, but they also eat a whole lot of cards, like a huge number of cards in the original. It's just personal agendas, and also the outcomes of what happens if you succeed or fail in that agenda. And we could use that those cards, like no component in the game is like free to put in the game. It will increase the cost and therefore the price of the game. And we could use those cards to make unique order decks for each army in each scenario, which makes faster setup, and also gives us the ability to make the armies even more different in each scenario. So it was trade-off of designing what we want in the game. So for the amount of components personal agendas took, it didn't feel just quite a smart decision in hindsight, especially when we want to have a different approach to theme-wise. Like, this is all about peacemaking and not about personal agendas or semi-cooperative aspects such as traitors and such. So that's about Dawn of Peacemakers, and as said earlier, we are going to have a full stream about just comparing the two. I will probably also do a setup timing to see how fast it is to set up each of the games, as that's one of the things that has really changed. And the last section is viewer questions. Well, even though all of these are kind of like viewer questions, but these ones are the ones that got asked in the stream, which I could not find a good place during the other sections. And the first question is, which adventurer would win in a fight? From Ville, of course, because he likes to ask off-the-wall questions. So from these 4 adventures, I would most likely say Nabo, because he's the most like daring of them all. Even though if Akesan could talk him out of that, but Jainar would probably not even take part in the fight, and Tambato is like, why are you hitting me? So my vote would go to Nabo. Ville says this is important. Yes. The next, as important or even more so, is this question here. What is the recipe for food poisoning? And that's one of the favorite cards of many, especially in the original, is the food poisoning here. And we can pretty clearly see that Nabo is throwing in some fish bones in the cauldron, in the soup. So I'd guess the recipe is fish bones, but Nabo can do way worse soup than others, because he can deal up to 4 damage while the others can do up to 2 damage. So I'm not sure what's his secret, maybe some rotten fish in addition or something. But I don't, that's the answer you get for the food poison. And next question is, will the game be featured by major YouTube channels, like there were a list of Dice Tower, etc. So depends on what you count as major channels. There will be new content, new coverage for the game from various different channels, including, for example, one of my favorites, Rob's Gaming Table, which will actually come this Sunday, so tomorrow from the stream, 27th, and it will start, I think we'll actually start at same time as this stream. This was 7 p.m. My local time, Finnish time, so when this stream started, Rob's Gaming Table stream will start tomorrow. And so there will be some many channels, not too many major channels will cover it during the crowdfunding campaign, simply because the bigger the channel, the more expensive it is for them to cover any too many preview content. Most, I think all of them still do free reviews later if they feel like it, basically. But as for preview content for crowdfunding, the bigger the channel, the more expensive it is. So we don't have a huge marketing budget, so we have found it not usually worth it to have too many of the big major channels covering our games. And I also personally really like to support the smaller creators by them being able to cover our games as well. Shout out to Sherthekos and others who have covered our games now and in the past. Next question, not exactly about Peacemakers perhaps, but our games in general. Have you considered doing an art book? Sherthekos sending some hearts. Yes, we have considered, and we will most likely do one or more in the future, but we didn't have time to do one for Peacemakers, as it would have delayed the project, and you don't really want to run project too late in the year because of SN and holidays, so it would have pushed the campaign next year, and the game didn't need the extra time, so we didn't want to push it simply because of the art book. And we will probably one or more future campaigns we will start doing some art books, but instead of them being a game specific one, we are thinking about doing art books for like Dimuria, the world of Animal Folks, where all our games take place, and then doing like volume 1, volume 2, and it will cover a bunch of games in one book. So Peacemakers, Horrors of War, and art from it will probably be in an art book, but that will be at a later date. We have to be conscious on what we use our time and effort with, as if we do art book, it's time away from actually doing the games, which people usually want more than an art book. And here's one from the stream as well. Will the rulebook have an overview page? More details was like a page which would have overview of each character, their horrors, their special abilities, and so forth, so people can choose based on what they feel like. And the answer is no, for a few reasons. One, it would, well, take a lot of space in the book to actually do that, and more importantly, I personally really like when you learn the adventures and the scenarios while you play. So at first they might be more like everything is new, you're not even sure which adventure does what, you don't know what the armies do or anything, you're like dropped in a new place, you're like, what's going on? But as you play more, you learn more about your adventures. By the end of the first game, you have learned what their special abilities are in the resource deck, and slowly through playing the game, you will also learn about their horrors, and it's like, I think it's really fun as it unfolds slowly, like when you see a new horror one after another, and usually, oh, this is my like past haunting me from this and this and this. So it's, for me, it's more fun to learn about these sort of things while I play, instead of having a huge info dump right away. Okay, let's go through everything right here. So that's the thought process of not having an overview page of this, as it's introduces a lot more paralyzing before the first game. We want you to go in and play the first game as fast as possible, instead of having to jump through multiple hoops before doing so. And if you don't come up with new questions soon, this next one will be our last one, and it's, well, really similar to the previous one. Will we know what the adventure differences are? Having the special abilities and horrors on the cards is great, so you don't have to remember them, but it might feel random if we don't know from the start that character X is a healer, etc, etc. So as I already said, we try to have it in a way that you learn as you play, but we give you some hints about these different things in the rulebook in this spread. Like all the adventures have their own dialogue here, which mirrors their attitude in life and in the game, like how they do things. Everyone has their own line, and you can try to think of what kind of person they are based on this, what kind of stuff they will do. And the same goes once you go to the scenario, you also have dialogue from the adventures, so you can try to figure a little bit out. But the first game, any game you play, is kind of like, not just this one, but anyway, should be more like an learning experience and not take too serious. Like, you can replay, it's not a campaign where you always move forward. You can replay the first one again and again if you want. And if you really want, I'm not stopping you from taking a look at the resource deck to see what cards do what, but we wanted to keep it in minimal stuff like that, simply to have the barrier to entry as low, so you can jump in and play as fast as you want, instead of having to go through page after page after page of of stuff. But we can still, our team can take this into consideration and see if we can improve the text, for example, that we have about the dialogues, especially the ones that you read before the first game, if we can improve and give more hints here of what kind of character they are, as we are still working everything out to make it as good as possible. So I will add a note for that if we can drop some extra hints in there for you to think, okay, this character likes to heal and this is the opposite, doing the food poisoning and stuff like that. And those are all the questions we had, except for Ville's one he likes to repeat is when is the next stream, and I will take a look because I don't remember. Yeah, but it's 4 days from now on. All the streams are 4 days between each other. So the next one will be a gameplay demo. I have 2 gameplay demos here on YouTube, and I have more on Discord, where you can join from the link down in the description. There I will do demos where you can actually play the game. On YouTube I will just like play my either soul or two-handed or something like that, and there's a little bit too much delay on YouTube. We'll see if I have special guests. Maybe I will have, if there's some people who would like to join. Hint, hint. I have not figured that out yet. But as for the next one, if I can find the correct... it's not that one, it's this one. Too many documents. But the next stream is going to be the gameplay, as I said, and it's on 13th of this month, so next Wednesday. And I'm not sure exactly what time it will be. I will schedule it soonish on YouTube, so if you follow the channel, you will get notified on your subscription tab when I have scheduled it. But it will be next Wednesday. Next week's Wednesday is going to be a full gameplay demo. Probably the first scenario, just to give a nice overview of that one for everyone as a baseline. Thank you for everyone for joining for the question and answer for Peacemakers Horrors of War. Let's make one final fix for the title. Yes. Thank you everyone for joining. No, I will make one extra. Here we go, now it's perfect. Thank you for joining the Q&A stream for Peacemakers Horrors of War. Be sure to like, comment and subscribe, please now. But yes, and next Wednesday we are going to have the gameplay demo for the game. There's already on the campaign page you can find gameplay videos from third parties, but we are going to have the first recorded one on our channel on next Wednesday. Thank you for everyone for joining in, and hope to see you next time. Thanks and bye.